Hi, I'm Aaron Friedman, and this is Politidoxy. Today's topic, dirty politics. We have seen the rise of dirty politics and its normalization in our culture. For some people, it's second nature, and for others, it's revolting. But there is specific people in political parties who have decided that it's either the only way they will conduct politics, or it's impossible for them to even fathom to utilize any unfair advantage. And that is exactly what the conservative movement is lacking. People who are ready to do the dirty work. There are so many feel-good conservatives who want to make people feel inclusive and be friendly and make friends, get along, and see our enemies as political opponents. Now, our political opponents should be seen as political opponents, but we do have enemies and they should be seen as such. And it's important for conservatives to learn how to utilize any political advantage they get, regardless if it's fair or unfair. To make myself very clear, fairness is way overrated. If we're gonna judge things by what is fair or what isn't fair, then revenge should be the norm, because revenge is fair by its definition. You do something bad to me, and I do something bad to you. That is revenge. That is fairness. But we don't see it that way in our moral order, because fairness is a terrible metric for morality. The real question is, what is just? So, in conclusion, fairness is overrated and should not be used as a metric on how to utilize your political advantages. Now to look on the other side. Liberals, leftists, Democrats, all of them have no qualms using any political advantage they get, no matter how despicable it is. They will use children as props to push their anti-gun agenda, and conservatives need to learn from that. Since Democrats introduced this despicable behavior in our political arena, conservatives should do the same when it comes to abortion. I'm just waiting for the day conservatives will have the cojones to actually bring up survivors of botched abortions on the House and Senate floor and make those House Democrats and House Senators answer to these survivors why it's so important for these senators that these survivors be dead now. Make the Democrat senators explain to the American public in front of the faces of the victims of their evil policies why the people before them should be dead, should have never been born, why they don't have a right to life. Give to these people a voice. And since the left is mob-like, and mobs, as we know, don't understand logical arguments, they don't take easily to that. They take only to images, photos, and slogans. Therefore, the Republicans should bring up people who have been deformed by these terrible acts of inhumanity. Conservatives need to highlight abortion as the barbarity that it is. Show to America the faces of the victimized, how these people have been deformed and their rights stripped from them, and show America the advocates for the continuation of such behavior. You want to win the argument on abortion? This is how you do it. It is murder, and unless the American public is made to face the reality of it, this debate will always be an uphill climb for conservatives. Now, no doubt about it, there will be outrage. But remember, the outrage will only come because you will be effective if you do so. The House and Senate should hold hearings discussing the human life form that is being formed, and if it is or isn't a life, that debate should be held on Congress with people who have been affected by it, and let's see how the Democrats squirm, not being able to answer, and if they do answer what we suspect they will answer, they would be put on notice by the voters. Is it dirty? Is it fair? No, it's not fair, and yes, it's kinda dirty, because we want to keep things civilized. Yes, because abortion is so civilized, don't you know? I'm sorry, they do this all the time. There's no reason why Republicans can't do it. And it's all for the preservation of life. If indeed it is life, we need to do these quote-unquote radical steps in order to save as many lives as possible. This isn't about tax cuts. This isn't about trade. This is about the most fundamental human right. And to quote Barry Goldwater, extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice, and moderation in the pursuit of justice is no virtue. Except this is not extremism, it's radicalism, which we will discuss later in the episode. The next step that we gotta do is throw out all these bureaucrats who have been part of this Democrat machine in the State Department and all throughout the federal government. We have to put in loyalists, not specifically to the Republican Party, because as we know, the Republican Party works together with the Democrat Party. We need to put in loyalists to America and to justice. These people will be effective in carrying out what we will set as the agenda, and anybody who is ineffective should be thrown out. And of course, diversity will not be a factor in this equation. We will of course throw out every single Democrat loyalist from our federal and state governments. And the people on top should be dragged before Congress and made to answer for their crimes against our citizens. Those guilty should be put in prison. That is how we will be able to enact change, by changing the people who are supposed to be the enactors and putting in people who will actually do the hard work and investigate those politicians who should be investigated, such as Adam Schiff, who lied and doctored evidence. He should not be able to get away with this. Don't forget, Democrats were shouting from the rooftops about putting Donald Trump in prison. Why shouldn't Republicans put actual liars and actual corrupt politicians in the spaces that they belong? If your enemy is ready to do this against you, then you should be ready to do the same. They are putting trespassers from January 6th in prison for years on end and violating all sorts of laws in the process. Attorney-client privilege, not letting them to use all evidence in the cases as defense, beating them in prison, pushing off trials, holding people in prison without a trial date. I mean, these Democrats were shouting from the rooftops when we dare even scratch an Al-Qaeda terrorist in Guantanamo Bay. Democrats were so concerned about how we treat terrorists. Oh, we shouldn't torture terrorists. But fellow American citizens, oh heck yes. Don't get this mixed up. They view you lower than the terrorists, and the juries are stacked against them. If you ever wonder why Richard Nixon resigned instead of going through trial, is because he knew the deck was stacked against him. Let's put this into perspective. What did Richard Nixon do? He tried to cover up what people under his management who did things rogue without his permission, spying on his Democrat opponents. But he did not order it. Unlike almost every other Democrat president previously who did spy on their political opponents. Lyndon Johnson bugged Barry Goldwater's airplane and also some of the offices. Same is with John F. Kennedy, who also spied on his political opponents. Spying on your political opponents was the norm of the day. Richard Nixon did not spy on his political opponents. He did not order it. He only ordered a cover-up. But let's give more perspective on the situation. While Democrats talk about Watergate as if it's one of the worst things in American history, they neglect to talk about their own treachery throughout the Cold War when they let the Ruskies spy on the United States. Now that's a big deal, don't you think? But that's not discussed. What is discussed? Oh, Watergate. No, Watergate was not that big of a deal. As we know from the journalists, so-called, who uncovered Watergate, as they keep on saying over and over that literally anything Trump does is worse than Watergate. So Trump breathing is worse than Watergate. Trump breathing is not that big of a deal, which means Watergate is not big of a deal because Trump breathing is worse than Watergate. So, as we know, Watergate is not that big of a deal because literally anything and everything is worse than Watergate. But the story of Watergate gets much more interesting when you consider that the Democrats defended almost every Soviet spy that was in our State Department. Let's not forget how they protected Alger Hiss. And who uncovered Alger Hiss? Oh yes, it was Whittaker Chambers and Richard Nixon spearheading investigations into Alger Hiss. And who were the ones defending him? Right, it was the Democrats. And they still, till a day before the Venona Project uncovered the truth about Alger Hiss and proved without a shadow of a doubt that Alger Hiss was a Soviet spy, they still defended him. So, isn't that a big of a deal? If Richard Nixon covering up some rogue people spying on the Democrats is that big of a deal, then isn't it a huge act of treachery when you cover up Soviet spies spying on the American people? Oh, but that's not discussed, because that goes against the narrative that Democrats have built so nicely. The Democrats surrendered North Korea, China, Vietnam, Poland, and so many other Eastern European countries to the communists. And because of it, millions died. That is the true story of the Democrat Party. If you want more on this, you can look up Ann Coulter's book, Treason. Back to the subject, Democrats spied, and let's not forget about what they did to Joe McCarthy. This entire notion of McCarthyism. They attacked an innocent man and named a whole ideology after him when he had literally nothing to do with what they say happened. In summary, you could also read this in Ann Coulter's book, Treason. Joe McCarthy was right, the Democrats were wrong, and now we say McCarthyism whenever we see censorship, which is unjustifiable. But I digress. Richard Nixon is the worst because he uncovered the Democrats' treason and their allowance of Soviet spies in our State Department. And for that, he is remembered for the responsibility of Watergate. So, we started out that why didn't Richard Nixon go through trial? It's because where would the trial be held? Oh yes, in Washington, D.C., where the vast majority of the populace are Democrats. So, regardless if he is or isn't innocent, he would be convicted due to Democrat undue influence. That is why laws need to be passed that such trials should never happen in heavily skewed districts on one way or the other. Political ideology is a factor on how people decide to convict or acquit, and it's silly to pretend otherwise. And that is exactly what is happening in people who are being tried in Washington, D.C. Now to the next subject. Conservatives need to be able to put in or vote in effective conservative justices who are ready to actually uphold the law. We need to have judges on any state or district courts ready to defend our rights. But judges are not the only thing. We need to appoint or elect more district attorneys that are ready to investigate and prosecute any and all crime. And no Democrat who committed a crime, regardless of its nature, should be safe from accountability. Democrats have weaponized the Justice Department, the FBI, CIA, NSA, every other major institution that there is, and we need to flip it on its head. Not only to make it serve justice, but also be ready to go after those Democrats who turned it against us, because they are guilty. Now, of course, that is to be determined in the court of law. But there is no doubt in my mind that they are guilty. They are guilty of weaponizing the government against its citizens, and they should be held to account by the people taking over these institutions. Once we get a new majority in both houses and an executive branch ready to execute its job properly, there should be no amnesty, no good feelings. If you committed a crime, you will do the time. If, as a matter of fact, you were unethical, you lose your license. And furthermore, you cannot get your license back ever. Don't forget what happened with Alger Hiss. After he was proven to be a Soviet spy, he lost his license, but then got it back. I think it was the Massachusetts Bar Association that gave it back. They should be barred from ever receiving a law license ever again. Conservatives have to be ruthless with their enemies. And this is not to say anything of the Democrat voters. We're talking about specific people in government going after innocent people in the conservative movement, such as people from pro-life organizations. Conservatives need to turn it on its head and start being litigious with these Democrats and lock up every single rioter. New cases should be opened up and find out exactly who rioted in the year of 2020, and those people should be put in prison. Now, one important point to be made: none of them should be put in solitary confinement unless their behavior forces the prison guards to put them there. In my opinion, solitary confinement is a cruel and unusual punishment, but that's exactly what Democrats have been doing to January 6 defendants in the DC prison for days on end. Now, the next step should be going after all these cartels. They have organizations set up in the United States. I don't care how they make their money, we can go after them. If the IRS is able to find out if a grandmother gave a little bit too much money for a grandson, I'm pretty sure our federal government is perfectly capable of getting rid of all these cartels. The blood of these cartel members should be shed upon the ground which they stand if they do not leave the United States before we decide to execute them. These people deserve the death penalty, and I'm calling for it. Specifically, the ones who have been pushing fentanyl through the southern border. We have to get rid of all of them, get them out of the United States, and then have Mexico understand that we will take charge and destroy these cartels. We won't ask them nicely, please, can you take care of it? We've done that numerous times. The cartels own the Mexican government. There is no help from the Mexican government. Nothing will change on the side of Mexico without the United States actually taking care of business. That doesn't mean we don't work with Mexico. Coordination is a good idea, but coordination without us being in charge will result in absolute failure. We will weaponize our border guards and all institutions necessary against the cartels within the United States or within Mexico. It sounds fascistic, it sounds this, it sounds that. I don't care. People are dying. What was it what Democrats couldn't stop saying? Well, if it saves one life, oh, we could lock down everything. We can mask all your children. All of your lives have to be uprooted because if it saves one life, these absolute moral morons, they have no mouth to speak about how we should take care of business when it comes to the southern border. And also, all those cartels that we do capture alive, they should be put to death if found guilty of smuggling fentanyl or guilty of murder, and if any other crimes, given the appropriate punishment. But none of them, absolutely none of them, should be sent back to Mexico where they can continue doing what they do. You know who we should deport? Illegal aliens, not illegal alien criminals who are criminals on such a degree that they commit these heinous crimes. Those people should be brought to justice. Next step, how to get the American people on board with such a so-called radical move is show the victims of the fentanyl crisis. Show the public who has been affected. Hold hearings. Bring up these people. Show the public. Make the Democrats unable to oppose this agenda. We have seen some of it when Republicans brought up a mother who had her 2 children die from the fentanyl epidemic. What was Biden's response? Oh, that those drugs were smuggled in under the previous administration. Ha 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 ha. He literally laughed afterwards. This should be used as a campaign ad against Biden in 2024, regardless who gets the nomination. Expose the Democrats for who they are. They don't care about you, America. Show the public who the Democrats really are. It may not be fair. Not all Democrats are like that. Oh, I know some Democrats, they are nice. Yes, I know, I understand. But we're not dealing with that here. We're not dealing with individual Democrats. We're dealing with the Democrat agenda. When a Democrat runs in a district, it's not the Democrat running. It is the Democrat agenda. That is why Biden won. Democrats didn't vote for Biden per se. They voted for the Democrat agenda. That's why Fetterman won. It's not because they voted for Fetterman. They voted for the Democrat agenda. Not all, but a significant amount. Have you ever heard vote blue no matter who? That is exactly what it means. That regardless who is running as a Democrat, it doesn't matter because it's still blue. It's still the Democrat agenda. So you could have a moderate Democrat. I'm telling you, within the next 5 or 6 minutes, that moderate will turn into an extremist within the Democrat Party. Some takes more time than others, but they all eventually do or grow out of it and become independents or so-called moderates, which, by the way, the word moderate nowadays doesn't mean what it's supposed to mean because the Overton window has been moved so far left that now left-wing policies is considered, oh, that is the moderate position, which kind of rubs me the wrong way when people talk about when you have two extremes, the right decision is probably in the middle. When you have somebody who says that murder is never okay and the other side who says murder is always okay, the correct decision is not that murder is sometimes okay. That is in the middle, but it's still not the right decision. And you could take thousands of other examples like this where Republicans would say one thing, Democrats would take the extreme, and people would say, okay, I guess the middle is this moderate position. No, it's still the left-wing position. It's still the leftist way of doing things. They just pull it so far left that now what they really want is actually this part left. But they get it anyway because people are fooled into thinking, oh, I guess this is the moderate position. Don't vote for the middle just because it's the middle. Same thing with fair. Don't vote for fair just because it is fair. Vote for candidates or issues once you have critically examined them. Next step. We should do to the Democrats exactly what the Democrats have been doing to the Republicans. As long as it is not completely illegal, Republicans, specific Republicans, not all, but specific people who are ready to do the dirty work, should be protected by the greater conservative movement and excused for what they are doing, no matter how unethical, as long as it is not illegal, no matter how unethical or dirty it may sound, as long as the Democrats did it before us. Of course, the Democrats will start shouting, how dare they do this? We bring up the point, wait a minute, you guys did it first. You guys did it as well. The question is, if it were wrong when you did it, why did you do it? And if you did it because it's not wrong, then you can't complain now because it's not wrong, period. Now, the point why I am saying this is not for revenge, although there should be some accountability. The point I'm saying this is to prove to the Democrats that Republicans are also perfectly capable of doing all the things they are doing. We can do it too, and even better than you, but we will choose not to in the future if you would come to this table, sit down, and discuss how we will conduct politics for the future. Force them to sit at the table and make it very clear this is not a way how to conduct ourselves in politics, because if we continue down this path, dirty politics and corruption will be the rule of the day. You have been doing it, and we can do it as well. Let's both of us not do it, otherwise there will be mutual assured destruction. So my point is, don't do corrupt things, don't do immoral or unethical things just so you should be unethical or immoral. Do it to stop all this immoral and unethical behavior. Now let's take a quick look at John Fetterman for a moment. Speaking right now, he is being treated for extreme depression. And the other Democrat from Pennsylvania, something is going on over there. So apparently Pennsylvania doesn't really have any representatives who are senators at the moment. So, but back to just John Fetterman. The media lied him into office. And now he is incapable. So far, we'll see if things change. And I've seen some Democrats now point to his wife, who has been the one actually pushing him to run, saying that, oh, since he is now incapable of executing his office, they think that his wife should be the one to take his place. And this might have been a play from his wife in order to get into power. And you know what I say? I say I 100% agree. I've seen conservatives say, no, she doesn't deserve it. No, she should not be given the power. I say, actually, yes. This is part of playing dirty politics the same way Democrats do it. Democrats did so with George Santos, holding back all the dirty laundry on him, waiting for him to get elected, then dropping everything and saying he has to resign in order for them to be able to win a new election to get another Democrat seat. Now, that's actually a brilliant move on the Democrats' part, but they didn't account for George Santos actually having cojones and saying, no, I'm not. Although I'm a huge liar, I still stand up for this one principle that you guys don't get to throw me down from my seat just because you wanted the seat in the first place. You could have aired all this dirty laundry back in the election, but you didn't, because this is exactly what you planned for, and I'm not gonna give in so far. So I say, on that part of George Santos, actually very good. I'm very glad it's happening. He should obviously not resign. And of course, I know what the Democrats are shouting, probably hypocrisy, 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 and all that words. I just love that. Because when Democrats, or when anybody, especially Republicans, when they shout the word hypocrisy, that means they can't do anything to stop you. Because the people who don't have any power, they're the ones shouting hypocrisy, because that's exactly the only thing they can do is shout from the rooftops. If they could do anything, they would do it. But they shout hypocrisy precisely because they can't do anything. So, when Democrats start shouting hypocrisy, just know they are powerless to stop you and you should ignore them. Now, of course, you gotta be moral, you gotta figure all that out, but that is to be discussed in later episodes. But don't be scared when Democrats shout hypocrisy and so on, because hypocrisy is the voice of the powerless. The only thing you should answer to the Democrats when they shout hypocrisy is, well, it's not illegal and you can't stop me. Right in their face. Now back to the main subject here about Fetterman. His wife is now being touted to be the new senator appointed by the governor, and Republicans say she doesn't deserve it. Of course she doesn't deserve it, but think about it. Of course she should get it. We wait till the next election cycle because Pennsylvania will have to hold a special election because of the temporary appointment by the governor, and she will without a doubt run. That is when you drop all the dirty laundry and say, wait a minute, this person right here was appointed by the governor, so she's not really an incumbent. So you get that advantage. And of course, before I continue, this time you actually put out good candidates who are strong conservatives and strong populists who can resonate with the voters in Pennsylvania. So back to the main point, the first thing you get is that she is not an incumbent. So that power is diminished on one side. The next advantage you get is to point out that the whole reason she is a senator is because she tortured her husband to run in the first place, then wait for him to get mentally ill and suffer severe depression. She literally depressed her husband in order to get into power. She is a power-hungry, manipulative scum. And of course she should not be re-elected. That's when you put everything out, but not after she's elected. At the election, that's when you put everything out there. And that's how you win the election on the Senate in Pennsylvania. Is it dirty? Of course it is. But Democrats would never hesitate to do so if given the chance. We just gotta utilize it first. And also, she does not deserve it. But she could still be a senator, and we need to make sure, in the case if it happens, we need to be prepared to utilize our advantages as it is given. Also, I'm not talking about the specific electoral advantages that we could or could not have when we have Mitch McConnell controlling the money and all that stuff. That is on a separate episode to come. But this is how we win, by using dirty politics in order to win. This is the way of politics as it is now. I hope it changes. I hope we could all be civil, and all this shouldn't have to be part of the discussion, but that is exactly where we are right now, and we need to be able to play the same game. The same goes with ballot harvesting. Wherever it's legal, it's dirty politics. Wherever it's legal, do it. And this is not a dirty politic move because it is actually the opposite, but it's still a very successful and useful tool that conservatives should utilize, because it also not only is an advantage to conservatives, it also is a way to protect the election system and make sure everything is 100, and that is voter IDs. Democrats will be shouting from the rooftops, don't care. Now, to mail-in ballots, wherever it's legal, get Republican governors on it to make it illegal. But if it's impossible to do so, get those mail-in ballots to Republican areas, as long as it is legal, of course. Utilize all their dirty political conduct and use it against them. Now, of course, I have to make also this point on the trans issue. First point to be made is, it's impossible to transition from one to the other, no matter what you do. And anybody who calls a he, a she, just to be polite is actually denying reality and should be confronted and made to understand politely that this is absolute denying of reality. The people who are enforcing all this crazy behavior, they're not the polite ones, but why should you be polite to them? The answer is, the real way of being polite is acknowledging reality and understanding that a he is a he and a she is a she. Conservatives, stop being so-called nice. You have to be real. You have to be based in reality and be ready to enforce that reality upon those who want to deny it. To those men who think they are women, let me make myself clear. You may shed every bit of masculinity you still may have. You may have any surgery you want to deform and mutilate yourself, as long as it is legal, which it shouldn't be, by the way. You may dress up in any ludicrous outfit you wish, which in a normal society would be discouraged. You may put up as much makeup as you want to hide the reality of your character. You may try to convince as many people who are in tune with your type of ideology as you want. You may change your manner of behavior into that of a caricature of a woman. You may cry, you may shout, you may demand, but I will not bend, nor will thousands of my American citizens bend to this fake ideology. We will not surrender reality to you, and no, we will not be nice about it. Call yourself whatever pronoun you wish. I will call you exactly what you are. You are a person who have been led to believe, unfortunately, into lies by people who profit off your pain, and I will not indulge in that in any way. And to those of you who I just described, but added that you are after the kids, there will be a reckoning in the future. Things will start happening, legally speaking, that'll make sure that that behavior doesn't happen again, and those guilty will be punished, including the parents who has been allowing this. We will not bend the knee. We will not be understanding, tolerance, diversity, and whatever word you want to use to describe how humanity should behave. We will enforce morality as it should be. And I don't care how many feelings get broken. And the people who need help to figure out what is happening to them and with them, the help will be given to them to protect them from people who want to profit off their mental and personal problems. Now, all the things that I've said right now might sound radical. Oh, that is so radical. And you know what? Yes, it is. And I am a radical. I consider myself to be a radical conservative. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are like, oh wait, don't say that. That's ammunition against yourself. They're going to now call you a radical. Well, they're going to call me a radical regardless, so it doesn't really matter. But, as a matter of fact, I do consider myself a radical. But here's the thing. The word radical is not supposed to be used as a pejorative. Now, radical, of course, used to be a compliment. Oh, that is so radical. That guy, he's completely radical. But now it's a pejorative. But frankly, I don't care. What it means to me to be radical as in revolutionary, changing the industry. But revolutionary is a very leftist term. At least they use it a lot. So I rather consider myself a radical. Revolutionary, I want to revolutionize this conservative movement. Change the game. Don't forget, the people who held up McCarthy's speakership were all called radicals, and they should be called radicals because they wanted to change the game. Don't get it mixed up with radicalism. Now that's a totally different story, but the word radical itself is a good way of describing our new populist conservative movement. We are radical because the establishment, so-called, and the status quo has screwed us all. That's why we are radicals, because you don't deserve to stay in power. We want to revolutionize. We want to change. Let's not forget what Barry Goldwater said, as I've said previously. Extremism, in the case of liberty, is no vice, and moderation in the pursuit of justice is no virtue. I just changed that word extremism to radical. So to be radical in the pursuit of justice is no vice. To be a radical in the pursuit of justice is no vice. Remember that. Don't call yourself a moderate. As I've said, the Overton window calls you a moderate because you are left-wing in a sense. You called me radical as a pejorative? Well, guess what? Radicals set the agenda, and moderates uphold it. You cannot argue with that. Look at every radical movement that has succeeded and see how the moderates upheld it. As a matter of fact, the radicals became the moderates after they succeeded because they changed the Overton window. They shifted, so they became the moderates. So being a radical only means to be a future moderate. Furthermore, let's look what they called the Republicans in the 1800s who wanted to completely dissolve slavery. What did they call them? Radical Republicans. Wait a minute, ending slavery is radical? Wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. Giving people the rights that they deserve is a radical issue, a radical stance to take? Of course it is, because back then, that was the radical move to do. Because Democrats were saying, oh, why are you so radical? Don't be that radical. Republicans of those types said, no, we will be this radical, because we will be the future moderates, and they succeeded, as so should we. We are the new breed of conservatives, the radical conservatives who will succeed and will be the future moderates. If you call me a radical, I call you tepid and uninspired. And this is where I'm going to end this podcast. Thank you very much for listening, and please share this episode wherever to whoever you can. Leave a like, follow, and you can listen on this podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. And again, please share with whoever and wherever you can. Help me out here. Only you can help me out in turning this podcast into a big voice in the conservative movement. If you want to reach out to me, you could reach out to me at politidoxy@gmail.com. And remember, my fellow radicals, stay political.